generando conciencia.
Bienvenidos a todos a este diálogo sin map, ecos de conciencia. Para nosotros, bueno, para mí personalmente es un gran placer estar aquí con todos vosotros. Y antes de empezar vamos a preguntar si, Débora, ¿dónde estás por ahí abajo? ¿Cómo va todo? Bienvenida también a ti.
Hola Rosa, ¿todo bien por acá? Muchas gracias, bienvenidos a todos. Y sí, muy entusiasmado, con muchas ganas de partir, así que con todo el ánimo para seguir adelante con esto, Rosa.
Bueno, pues genial que digas eso, porque yo sinceramente estoy súper emocionada y no voy a mentir, estoy como un poco acongojada, que no voy a decir garabatos, lo voy a controlar, pero realmente hemos empezado con el listón alto, porque puestos a ponernos a hacer una entrevista, no hemos podido escoger nada mejor que empezar en el idioma de Shakespeare. Y esa es una manera de empezar que tenemos a Débora con nosotros, a Débora, a la que queremos mucho en general, pero en concreto en estas situaciones la queremos más todavía porque es la única que sabe hablar inglés, porque si fuera que os tenéis que fiar de mí, es aquello de bajamos la persiana, nos vamos a tomar algo, porque mucho éxito no habría. Pero sí, empezar esta primera entrevista en inglés era absolutamente imprescindible, porque tenemos una persona muy, muy, muy especial, una invitada que para nosotros es un lujazo tener. Por lo tanto, teníamos que empezar así, teníamos que empezar con ella, aunque fuera con el listón alto, aunque sea difícil, tiene que ser así, porque es un gran honor poder decir que está aquí con nosotros la escritora estadounidense, me he quedado ahí enganchada, Beth Miller. Beth, welcome, how are you?
Thank you, I'm well, thank you, how are you?
Fine, thanks for being here. No sé si lo he dicho bien, pero lo hemos intentado. Antes de empezar con la entrevista en sí y a escuchar a Beth, que básicamente es a quien queremos oír, no queréis escucharme a mí, 4 cositas sobre ella para que la conozcamos un poco. Beth es una escritora científica que hemos dicho que lleva con más de 18 años de experiencia en la Universidad de Washington, en San Luis, Missouri, donde la mayor parte de los trabajos los podemos encontrar en la web de la Facultad de Medicina y también ahora en la web de la Facultad de Ingeniería. Evidentemente también podemos leer sus trabajos en su página web, Journey Portfolio. Bueno, como os vamos a poner imágenes de esto, si no he pronunciado bien la web, la vais a ver. Y también, evidentemente, donde también podemos disfrutar, y ahí sí que yo lo subrayo porque yo he leído mucho de esos trabajos y son muy, muy buenos, en la revista Engine Momentum, de la que fue durante 12 años editora y de la que todas las historias de portada mayoritariamente son suyas y mucho del contenido también. Pero hay una guinda del pastel de toda la historia, que es la que hace que el camino de Beth y el camino de Inma se entrecrucen, que es su último libro. Y su último libro, editado este año pasado, en el 2023, es un libro muy especial, es un libro muy, muy valiente y honesto y que realmente creemos que va a significar mucho para todos vosotros que nos estáis escuchando, y que precisamente Beth viene a hablarnos de él. Es el libro que lo vamos a enseñar aquí, aunque también lo haremos pasar rápidamente, que es este libro aquí, The Most Painful Choice. Pero para no escucharme a mí todo el rato, Débora, cuéntanos un poquito más de este maravilloso libro que tengo aquí entre mis manos. Por favor.
Sí. Bueno, la idea no es arruinarles la sorpresa, pero sí motivarlos un poquito con este libro. Y es así tal cual dice Rosa, es un libro que no solo muestra la gran calidad investigativa que tiene Beth y con su gran trayectoria, en el fondo, trayectoria en el área de estudio científico y editando textos y escribiendo, sino que es un libro que está contado en primera persona. Entonces, rescato un poco tus palabras ahí, Rosa, es un libro muy valiente, es un libro muy honesto. Es un libro que transmite muy bien todo el proceso que ocurrió en el fondo en esta historia, como bien dice el título y tú lo mencionabas, la historia de un dueño y de la eutanasia por comportamiento, contado en primera persona. Entonces este es un regalo realmente que está disponible para todas las personas porque te muestra en el fondo un abanico de posibilidades que existen y que a veces los resultados no son necesariamente lo que uno espera, y no es algo tan nuevo, tan raro, sino que mucha gente pasa por cosas similares y en ese sentido este libro es un aporte. Así que, bueno, sin más preámbulo, without further ado, Beth, we're gonna thank you again for being here with us. And we want to start this interview and conversation taking the opportunity that you are here with us so you can tell us a bit about your book in your own words.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the opportunity. I'm very pleased to speak with you today. My book is, I call it a hybrid memoir. So part of it is my personal experience with Champ, who was a rescued German Shepherd who had significant behavioral health problems, which we never really figured out why. And the other part of my book is I looked at the scientific research that is available into veterinary behavior, genetic issues that could be behind these behavior issues, physical issues that could be behind these behavior issues. And I read hundreds of journal articles about looking for an answer of why are dogs like Champ and cats? Why are these pets the way that they are? And I didn't find one. So it's, as we all know, there isn't as much money for veterinary research as there is for human research. But there are people out there who are doing their best to try to find answers to this. And really the answer is right now, we really don't know. So I wrote this because I needed to make sense in my own mind and in my own heart of what happened with Champ, of my life with Champ, of Champ's life. And this was the way that I could sort of reconcile all of that experience, and then maybe help someone else who is considering the same thing or has had to have behavioral euthanasia for their pet, or is a veterinarian who treats pets like Champ and wants to know what these pet owners are dealing with these pets.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. So you mentioned Champ was your dog. He was a German Shepherd. Could you expand a little bit about who was Champ?
Yes, thank you. Champ was really a wonderful dog. He was very, very smart. So we adopted him from a German Shepherd rescue group in the spring of 2014. And we didn't know much about his background at the time, only that he had been in foster care, and that didn't work out. He was very, very thin. He only weighed about 60 pounds. And for a German Shepherd, that's very small, especially a male. And he was missing a lot of hair off of his back near his tail. And we adopted him. I, had high hopes that he would be able to take walks in the neighborhood with us and play with neighborhood dogs. And on our first walk, after we brought him home, he nearly pulled me over. I thought, okay, well, we'll just need to work on his leash skills. And then when we saw another dog, he basically exploded. He just barked, pulled, growled, spit, wanted to attack the other dog. And we thought, okay, well, we can get a handle on this. And so we tried many different resources to try to fix that. Things that we were comfortable with and things that we weren't comfortable with. But we thought, that was what we needed to do to help Champ. Champ was basically afraid of everything. And instead of cowering or shaking or hiding, he used his large size and large voice to scare everyone away from him. People, dogs, anyone. He was too scared, so he would jump up, and he was close to 6 feet if he was standing on his feet,
Wow.
hind legs. And he would bark very loudly and show all of his big teeth and his big mouth and just say, everyone just get away from me. And that worked because no one wanted to be around a big, mean German Shepherd. And so he learned that those scary people and those scary dogs would stay away from him when he acted like that. So he continued that behavior because it worked for him. And it was very, very difficult to change that in his brain. I did have some success for a while. I would have some success in the counter conditioning, where I worked to teach him that seeing another dog or another person was a good thing. But you have to catch that in almost a split second before they go into the red zone. Because once he's over his threshold, there was no going back. So we did end up having some success. We used a clicker for a while. We used treats for a while. I was able to run with him for a few years. He was a very active and athletic dog. He loved to be outside. It was just a very scary place for him. So I tried to keep him physically active, and I would run with him for a while. But when we would see another dog while I was running, because I was running, I couldn't react quickly enough to stop his reaction and stop him from going over the threshold. And I fell too many times, and I was getting hurt. So I had to stop the running. But when we were at home, he was such a good dog. He could do puzzles made for dogs in 30 seconds. And it would take me 5 minutes to get the puzzle ready, and he would finish it in 30 seconds. And he would look for more. And he loved to play games. He was not a snuggly dog until close to the end. He would never really get close with us. I don't really know why, but I think his initial home life was rough, and the people didn't really want him. And I think that he always had a fear that we would let him go, as his initial owners did. And that's, I mean, I don't know that for sure, obviously, but that is how I feel. But at home, I could teach him tricks. I could play games. I could tell him how handsome he was. He was really good at home. It's just the outside world, outside of our walls, was too scary of a place for him. We did some classes with him where he learned all kinds of tricks, and he did them all perfectly. No problem. You could bring on a harder one. And as long as there wasn't another dog within 3 or 4 feet of him, he was fine. He learned agility. He, climbed all the A-frames and did the weave poles and ran through tunnels, and no problem. But, put another dog right next to him, and that was a problem. So I tried to bring out the Champ that I saw, and have the rest of the world get to know him, but he didn't want the rest of the world to get to know him while he was living, so it was too scary.
Yeah, I bet. So just to clarify, you are describing a bunch of situations that you had to, endure. What of those things, or how would you describe like a behavioral problem? How, considering all your research, because you were the owner at the moment, right? But then you did all this research. So what's the definition?
So Champ had about half a dozen diagnoses. He had global fear aggression, territory aggression, separation anxiety, confinement distress. And any one of those by themselves is a challenge. He could break out of a crate. Didn't matter how strong, he could break out of it. And I never did figure out how he did it, but somehow he flattened himself and would squeeze out of a crate that was locked and was designed to hold in a 100-pound dog. He could not tolerate being in a crate at certain times. At other times, he was okay. So confining him when we left was difficult. And because of the separation anxiety, we couldn't leave him free in the house, because then he would destroy things, because he was so stressed that I was not there. If I left the room into a part of the house where he could not see me, he would start whining and crying and barking. So we had to spend a lot of time where I would disappear from his sight for 10 seconds, then 15 seconds, then 20 seconds, then 30 seconds, so that I could just go, to a different room for just a couple of minutes with him being okay with that. He could not stand to be away from me. And that was a very large burden for me, because it made me feel bad that he was hurting so much that he couldn't be next to me all the time. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't fix it. But I also have to function in my home, and I had to go to work. The fear aggression was, as I was describing before, how he would make himself big and loud to scare everyone away. When we first got him, he had some resource guarding issues. When we fed him, he wouldn't let us get anywhere near when he was eating. As I mentioned at the beginning, he was only 60 pounds when we got him, and his regular weight was about 100 pounds. I don't think that his prior owners were feeding him very high quality food. And also he was allergic to chicken and chicken eggs, and it's very difficult to find dog food that doesn't have chicken in it. And so I think that he was unable to digest the food that he had been eating, and that's why he was so thin. Once we figured out that he was allergic to chicken and found him a food that didn't have chicken or chicken egg in it, then he started to put on some weight and some muscle. And the missing hair from his hind end, was because he was scratching because of the chicken and the egg in his food. And so his prior owners, in an attempt to relieve his scratching, used hydrogen peroxide on his skin to try to relieve the scratching. Well, we know that hydrogen peroxide is not meant to relieve scratching. And so he lost his hair. That did grow back. thankfully. And he had a very healthy, shiny coat once he had good food to eat. The global fear, I think, was, as its name implies, the global fear was really the most difficult, because even riding in a car was a huge traumatic event for him. He literally screamed, and a lot of people don't understand me when I say that my dog screamed. He screamed and paced and would run around the back seat of my car while he was screaming. And it's really difficult to concentrate on driving when you have 100 pounds of dog behind you screaming, and he was trying to get into the front on my lap, which also, again, does not work when you're trying to drive. So I would end up crying when we were driving. I wore earplugs because the noise was so intense in the car. And so I tried not to drive him anywhere, but there are times when you have to drive a dog somewhere. Thankfully, we lived close enough to our regular veterinarian that we can walk, but the behavior veterinarian was 45 minutes away, so we had to drive, and that was a very long trip.
Yeah.
So I would say those are, each one of those things on their own was stressful enough, but combined into 100-pound package, it was a lot. It was a lot.
Yeah, for sure. It wasn't working for your family, right? So you're describing a situation that is not functional.
No, it was just, we just, everything we did was in trying to manage his symptoms, trying to prevent him from getting upset.
Expand a little bit about that, like
Yes.
Different options you tried.
We first went to a group, a dog training group, and had a behavior evaluation by two people. And they said that he needed to be in a special class for dogs with issues. And we were fine with that, but they weren't offering the class for several months, and we couldn't wait. So we ended up, the rescue group referred us to a trainer who had been in the military, who worked with German Shepherds and similar dogs, and was very good with them. So we took Champ there, and we left him there for 2 weeks for training. And then we went back once a week for 3 years to group training classes, where they learned some obedience, they learned some tricks, they learned how to be around other dogs. It was really a way for them to learn manners, use their brain a little bit. He got to learn how to stand on a skateboard. And so it was fun things. And we did that for a while, and then that facility closed, and we were kind of on our own again, and I had stopped running with him at this time, and we needed some more help. And that's when we found Linda, who was referred to us by our behavior veterinarian, and Linda worked with us one-on-one for the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm. So was there any specific moment in this journey where you felt like completely hopeless, like there's no solution, like there's a huge gap?
Honestly, not until the very end, because I was determined to find a way to help him. And I kept saying, there has to be something else we can do. If I have to not ever go anywhere outside of work, then that's the way that it has to be. And we altered our schedules so that one of us was always home. And to me, that's just the way that it needed to be. And so it wasn't until probably about 6 weeks before he died that I got to the point where I said, there's nothing more that I can do.
Right. So you're saying it wasn't until the very end, right? So we are talking about behavioral euthanasia, right? So could you explain in your own words what that is?
Behavior euthanasia, I believe, is for the pets who have incurable, unmanageable behavior issues that are affecting their quality of life significantly. I think there are different thresholds for owners. I think some owners have a lower threshold than I did as to how much that they will try and tolerate, and I think that's perfectly okay. Everyone has their own levels of tolerance. There are many, many pets in shelters who were surrendered because of behavior issues, and they're taken there because their owners don't feel that it's right to euthanize them. So they don't. And, no judgment here. But euthanasia then is for those pets who simply there's no other option.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So talking about that, what do you think it's so hard about this decision? What makes it so hard?
To me, it's probably the hardest decision I've ever had to make. I've had to euthanize other pets before, and I thought that was difficult. At the time, I thought that was difficult. I couldn't reconcile how I had the authority to make the decision whether my pet lived or died. But in all of those cases, those pets were old and had significant health problems that were going to take them soon anyway. And so it was really the most humane thing for me to do, to let them go, even though it was difficult. For Champ, he was 9 years old, which is a senior dog for a German Shepherd, but physically, as far as we know, physically he was healthy. He was not showing any signs of old age. He hadn't slowed down physically. He ate, he liked to be out in the backyard. He did all of the things that a healthy dog does. And so I felt that I was letting him down because there was nothing more that I could do to help him. And, hearing myself say that out loud, I can see how someone would say, well, if your dog has cancer, there's nothing more that you can do to help them. So you're not really letting them down. But cancer is much different in my mind from behavior issues. We know what cancer is. Cancer is sort of a known quantity. We know that it's probably going to take a life eventually. With behavior issues, there's always the grain of hope that something is going to work and that something in their brain is going to click and they're going to say, okay, I'm not afraid anymore, or okay, I trust you, or there's just always hope that something's going to change. And I don't think there's that same hope with cancer, again, to use that example. So I felt that I was letting him down because I wasn't willing to try anything else. But in all reality, there was nothing else to try. The only thing there was left was to do extensive imaging on his brain to look for a brain tumor or tumor somewhere else. And at that point, I said, well, the outcome is going to be the same anyway. Because if he has a brain tumor, that's not something that's treatable. Mm-hmm. So I saved us both from the trauma of having to go through a brain MRI on a highly anxious German Shepherd. And I just said, there's nothing else that we can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that has to be really hard, right? Like even like talking with people, well, but did you try this? Did you try that? But well, let's leave it as that. Or, you know, I think there should be a lot of pressure.
It was.
Right?
There was pressure and there was judgment. And honestly, I really didn't tell anyone beforehand, purposely. Because people did not understand. I did not share with people what our life was like. I just didn't, because people would not have understood that I scheduled my life around the 6 times a day he needed medication. And that I had to be in a certain place when the mail was delivered so that I could get him away from the front of the house. People just did not, they didn't understand. So I really didn't say anything to anyone. And when I did say, you know, oh, well, we're having some trouble with Champ, they say, well, you know, why don't you try this trainer? Or why don't you try CBD oil? And we were so far beyond CBD oil. You know, you just say thank you. You know, thank you for your suggestion.
Yeah.
But CBD oil was just not the answer to our problem. And it was a management issue. And you can only manage something for so long before the management no longer works.
Yeah, for sure. So you have mentioned a few things about tolerance, about trying so many different things, like trying to cope somehow all these years. So looking back, reflecting a bit on this journey, is there anything that you would have done differently?
No. I would have done everything I did. Even if I had known about his problems when we adopted him, I still would have taken him because I felt that he was supposed to be my dog. When I first saw him, he's my dog. And I still feel that way. I would not have changed a thing. I would have done everything I did. You know, there may be some medications that we tried that I wouldn't have tried, but I wouldn't change a thing. He deserved everything that I could give him. It was not his fault that he was the way that he was. Mm-hmm. He didn't ask to be that way. And it had to be hard for him as a dog to always be feeling so anxious and always be feeling so afraid. And it was my duty to help him not feel so afraid, to try to feel safe, to try to feel secure. And I did everything I could to try to help him with that. And I would do it all over again.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful, Beth. And I don't want to, spoil the surprise for the people that's going to read the book now, right? But we are just not talking about like veterinary appointments or medical issues, drugs. We're talking about reading stories to your dog, like that kind of connection. So that's really beautiful. It's getting emotional, really, because it's really, really deep. And I feel like many people that have this kind of relationships with their dogs and, family members that are also pets, animals, it's going to resonate on them. So how does your multi-species family look like today?
My family today, I have my husband, and I have a golden retriever named Mac, who is honestly such a blessing. He is everything I could ever ask for in a dog, and then some, and not taking away from Champ at all. And I actually think that Champ had something to do with Mac, because Mac is pretty much the opposite of Champ. Mac loves everyone. Everyone is his best friend. He's always happy. He will do anything you ask him to do. He actually might even be smarter than Champ, which is saying a lot. And he's just really a wonderful dog. And we're now doing agility classes together. We are learning agility courses and to see if maybe we can do some competitions after a while. And his agility teacher reached out to me, and somehow she found my book. I'm not sure how, but she did. And she is going through this experience with one of her dogs right now. And she said, I think you were sent to me to help me with this decision. And I said, well, I'm sorry that you're in this position. No one ever wants to be in this position. But if anything, please understand that you're not alone. And you're not the only one who has experienced this. And anything that you decide is okay. Mm-hmm. So, and then I also have a cat, Mabel, who was adopted from a shelter, and she came to us 5 months to the day after Champ died, and she really helped me learn to trust in having a pet again, because I was afraid of getting another pet, especially a pet that was a stray cat, because I didn't know her history, and I didn't know if she would have any behavior issues, and I knew I couldn't go through that again. But she has turned out to be just fine. So
that's very brave, and that's actually why I want to ask you this, because you're overcoming trauma in a way, right? So it's I don't know, good for people to know that there's hope, that you can still, try and give a pet a good family and build those, relationships between humans and animals, even though you had like a traumatic experience, right? I think in your story, you tried everything, and you gave, Champ a complete life for a, German Shepherd. And I think that gives you peace in a way, right? Mm-hmm. So you were mentioning just now about this situation where you talk with someone that's going through something similar, right? So to expand that, recommendations or your thoughts, what would you say to people in general that are, experiencing something like this?
First of all, I would tell them I'm sorry that they're in that position, and it's a position that no one ever wants to be in. And it's a club that no one wants to be a member of. I think that everyone has to decide based on how they feel themselves, as well as what they observe in their pet, what is the best choice in this situation. Mac's teacher said she can't even think about euthanasia for her dog. It just upsets her too much. And so she said she started reading my book and she thought that she could read it from cover to cover. And she only got to chapter 3 and she had to stop because it was too close for her. So I would say that it's okay, whatever decision you need to make. And don't judge yourself for making the choice to euthanize, because if that is your choice, then that is the best decision for both your pet and for you. If you choose not to euthanize, then that is the best decision for you as well. And it's something that you can always change your mind on later. But it is very easy to feel guilty about doing this. And I really felt guilty about taking a life. I felt like I was taking a life in my hands, and that I shouldn't have control over another life. But if anyone had to make the choice of whether to euthanize Champ or to let him live, I wanted it to be me, because I had the closest bond with him. I didn't want anyone else to make the choice. So I was pretty selfish about that. But so it's very contradictory, because on one hand, I didn't want the responsibility, and on the second hand, I didn't want anyone else to have the responsibility. So it doesn't make sense. It contradicts, but that's how I felt about it. And I knew that I had the support of the 3 other professionals who knew him best. Both of his veterinarians and Linda the trainer were the ones who knew him best professionally, and they all said that was the best choice for him. Mm-hmm. And that helped to solidify my own decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really important. Like you taking the decision, but at the same time having some support, right? Some professionals around you that, agreed and recommended options and help you and guide you through the process. So I think that's really key. So since we are kind of approaching to the end of this interview, is there anything that we didn't ask you that you wanted to, maybe you had an answer and want to share with the people?
I would say that I would really like to see the veterinary community look into this a little bit more, because it seems like it's becoming more common, or else it's becoming more out in the open, which is what I would like, because I would like to see the stigma disappear, and the judgment disappear, the judgment of people who have to euthanize their pets. It's no one's fault, and it's certainly not the fault of the pet owner who tries to fix things. And it's not the fault of the pet who was genetically built that way. And I would really like to see more research in this area. Maybe different treatment options, different medications. I know medications take decades to develop, but it would be nice to have another choice for treatment. And then I would say to people who have had to go through this, don't be afraid to get another pet. Don't be afraid to get another rescue pet, the likelihood of experiencing this again is very low. Not zero, but it's very low. And you'll never know how much another pet can heal you unless you give it the opportunity to.
Yeah. Thank you for that message. I think it's a lot for, in general, for the community to think about, to digest. I think there's definitely more awareness and advocacy to do in this topic, and also more support for the veterinary community, because I can tell you as a veterinarian, it's a very controversial topic. We are also very judged because of these kind of decisions and the cumulative effect of taking these decisions, that it also has an impact, right? So I think there's a lot of actors that we need to call to have these tough conversations, and in that sense, your book, it's a gift, as Rosa has mentioned a few times, to really, ignite these conversations, and having those experiences so well, described by someone like you. It's really something that we appreciate, and we want to thank you for being here today, sharing your story, talking about your book, and we really hope that this is a platform for this kind of stories, to reach more people, and hopefully we're going to be collecting, more input from more people, and I think building that community of people that it's, experiencing similar things. It's going to be great. I'm going to pass it to Rosa if she wants to add something. Rosa, ¿quieres despedir a Beth? I want to say bye to Beth.
Bueno, primero, first of all, thank you very much with big letters. Absolutely, it's very brave that you do with this book, first of all, and in this moment with this interview. Ahora ya sí que paso al castellano, excuse me Beth, pero más que nada también para despedir y cerrar este momento, porque es real. Yo creo que lo que nos ha dado Beth desde el momento que hace este libro y hasta el momento que además decide aceptar esta apertura de vente aquí y explícanoslo, es absolutamente valiente, porque se necesita. Yo creo que nos ha ayudado a ponernos otras gafas para ver una realidad que es muy fácil no querer mirar, o, como muy bien ha explicado ella, juzgar. Y es cierto que esta entrevista ha sido un absoluto regalo que nos acaba de hacer, y yo espero que se pueda aprovechar, y también abro la puerta a que todos aquellos que hayáis visto la entrevista hagáis comentarios y comentéis si también os habéis sentido identificados, si os pasa, porque ese you are not alone, no estáis solos en estas situaciones. Creo que es absolutamente imprescindible que no lo olvidemos nunca y que lo tengáis presente, porque bueno, yo creo que lo ha cerrado de manera muy bonito. Hay esperanza, recomendable 100%, buscarlo, porque es imprescindible, os pase o no os pase la situación. Una vez más, Beth, thank you very much for being here with us. Débora, si quieres decir algo más y ya despedimos.
Yeah, just last words, Beth. We are just saying again, thank you for being with us and sharing your story. So any final thought?
Thank you so much for this opportunity for me to talk about not only my book, but to talk about Champ and to honor his life. And it means a lot to me that other people love Champ also.
Well, I think all of you, your family and Sam deserve this moment.
Thank you.
Nos vemos de aquí un mes con la próxima entrevista, y no olvidéis que esto está aquí. Hasta la próxima.
INMA, generando conciencia.